Hello, 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 everybody. It is Emily, and I wanted to take a few minutes and share the story of how Switch got started. I have been getting asked that a lot and realized that I never really documented it in this way before. So, back in 2022, December actually of 2022, I something that most people don't know about me, even though I'm from Montana, I hate winter. I love wine. I love getting together with like minded women, and I had too many things in my closet. I didn't know what I didn't know about how bad the fashion industry is for the planet. And so I decided that instead of bitching about the winter and all the things, that I would put together an event so that I had something to look forward to. And I had never hosted a clothing exchange before. So I started to research just how different ones were being done, worldwide, what was kind of happening in the space. And I put an event on Facebook. Not all of my friends are my same body shape and size. So I knew that I needed to open it up to a larger audience so that it could be successful, right? There's nothing worse than, and probably the people that have experienced this the most is, you know, I don't get invited to clothing swaps because of my size. And I think I've talked to several like really small women who also don't get invited to clothing swaps because of their size. So I wanted to open it up to a larger audience so that it was more inclusive. And so I put an event on Facebook and just opened it up to anyone could come. And I kind of explained how it was going to work and, all the different things that were going to happen. And within about 10 to 12 days, there was so much interest that I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to host this at my house if even a small portion of these people show up. And so, what we ended up doing was renting meeting space at the Hilton. And then, if you know anything about Montana, we have ridiculously cold spells happen here. And so it was the weekend in January of 2023, like the last weekend of the month, it was 30 below zero. So, so many of the women that were going to participate ended up not coming. And we still had about 20 women participate. And there were some things happened that weekend. The other thing is that we collected over 817 items that first weekend. And I didn't know what I didn't know about how things were going to happen, what was going to go down. So, when you remove the barrier of money, right? And the way that we participate with clothing is very different than when we have to even think about a, $5, $7, $10 purchase. So, it was really fun to just see how they were willing to try things that they normally wouldn't try, and the way that they were exploring and discovering things because there was no guilt and no risk. It was really, really fun. A couple of things that happened that first weekend that I didn't expect. There were a couple of girls who came in and said, "You're always dressed so cute. Would you just dress me?" And I was like, "Hell yes, let's do this. This is so fun." So we just spent a couple of hours trying things out. And the thing that was so amazing to me as a coach, right? My background is in coaching, was that they were willing to try styles and colors and textures that they normally wouldn't try because I don't really know if I'm going to wear that, right? I don't know if I could pull that off. How many times have you yourself or heard other women saying things like that? And it just allowed them to set that down for a moment and explore. play with their identity a little bit, right? Like examine it. And at the time, I didn't know this was what was happening, right? This is all happening in real time. I wasn't seeing these things until much later, right? Now that I've sat back and, we've watched this happen in the store now month after month after month, day after day after day. But during that first event, it was just so cool and so fun to see how we participate when we don't have to think about when there's no decision fatigue, right? And so the I started this Facebook group for the women that were going to participate to let them know like how it was going to work and all the different things. And so after the event was over, there were the women who didn't come sending me messages, and in the group they were saying, when are you going to do the next one, when are you going to do the next one, when are you going to do the next one? I was like, I wasn't really planning on doing a next one. Like this was supposed to be, something for me to get rid of some things that I wasn't wearing and that didn't serve me anymore, and then to, create community, right? To be in a space with other women who, also want something to look forward to in the winter and love wine and love getting together. And I've always loved fashion, and I've always gotten lots of not suggestions, compliments on, oh my gosh, you always look so cute, or those kinds of things regardless of my size. I think that's the other thing that has been so fun about this whole process for me, is to watch and see that it doesn't matter what size a woman is. We all have things that we don't love, or that we're criticizing ourselves about, or that we're trying to hide or minimize. And how, for me, I look back and I started this deep internal journey of working on myself and really loving my body in a way that society and or my environment didn't support initially. And then I wanted to be somebody who was sharing that with other women, right? Giving them the permission to love on themselves rather than hate or criticize and judge what was going on with their body, regardless of whether that was, because of an injury, because of weight loss, weight gain, like whatever the story was, right? And this space really created such a safe environment to explore and let go of some of those judgments and criticisms. And it was really such a beautiful journey in a very short period of time. The other thing that was kind of cool and that happened was I started to research. Like, I'm pretty loud and obnoxious, and so I started to research how bad the like as I was I guess I should say, as I was researching, right, I learned how bad the fashion industry is for the planet. And I didn't know what I didn't know about textile waste and it being a global epidemic and all the different things that kind of come with that. And so then I just started sharing, different things about what was happening and how those things were transpiring and the places where they were showing up, and just educating. Because at least then, if you're going to make the same decision that you were making before, what brands you were supporting, or whether you're a thrifter or not, or just different kinds of things, at least you're making it from an educated and conscious perspective, rather than from an unconscious and, oh my gosh, I didn't know that, and if I knew, I would make a different choice, right? So that was kind of my position, was to be able to just help people have a better awareness of what's happening. 713 gallons of water to make one cotton t-shirt, that we're making almost 2 billion with a B pairs of jeans every single year. And how, what the process looks like from some of these brands and some of these places that are greenwashing people, and they don't know it because they didn't go down the rabbit hole like I did. And so I just wanted to be able to empower and share some of the things that were happening so that they had a better option. or that they could make a more informed decision. So as we were, kind of walking that through that journey, and I was sharing those things, and they were saying, when are you going to do the next one? We end up having a couple of pop-up events. My sister owns a doggy daycare pet salon, and we would use one of her locations. On Friday night, they would close, and we would take all of their stuff and push it over to the side of the room, and we would set up our little pop up swap shop for the weekend. And, it was so fun, and it was so cool to see what women were doing, and the way, kind of all the things that I already shared, right? The way that they would participate. And it started to make me think, like, could this be something that we did on a regular and consistent basis? But it was taking like 7 hours or 5 hours to set up and 7 hours to tear down. And we were packing up all of this stuff. And I had even at that point developed some relationships with some nonprofits in town locally who were needing things, right? They needed it to support the folks that they're supporting. And so we ended up getting some of those materials to those people. And it was a massive, massive undertaking. And so it was like, we need a physical location, right? We need to get a space where we don't have to put all this stuff up and take it all down. And so I started to really research, you know thrifting models, and what I really enjoyed and liked as a consumer, the things that, I didn't like, and what made the businesses, really successful from a financial perspective, from a, um, you know, business model perspective, how those things worked, what wasn't working. I was really inspired by the shared economy, and how we access versus ownership, right? We don't have to own all of these things. We really can all just share, and how we've accumulated so many things. We're such a consumable society that when we come together and we can create a space where we all have access to these things, right? It's a game changer on so many levels, from a emotional, physical, financial, right? All of these pieces factor into. And then it was so cool to see the community that was created as a result of like-mindedness, wanting to come together. And if I was going to go to my girlfriend's house and take clothes out of her closet, why couldn't we do that on a larger scale? And so it just was a really powerful experience to go through and to watch, right? Personally, and then from afar, watching the conversations that were happening, the transformations that were coming, that we didn't even know, right, were going to happen. How we would choose things that we normally wouldn't choose, simply because there was no guilt, no risk. And so that became the foundation of when we started the store, why we started the store, and how we operate.